Hi, everyone. I'm Konni Burton, CEO and founder of The Texan. I just got through with a podcast with Cliff Maloney. He's the president of Young Americans for Liberty. It was a really great podcast and video. I think you're going to enjoy it. His organization moved from Washington, D.C. to Austin, Texas. He talked about that, obviously talked about what the organization does and stands for, and how you can get involved if you're wanting to either be a part of the organization or donate to the organization. But I think it's really interesting, particularly for college-age kids. You'll want to watch this podcast. After you've listened to the podcast, would you please go to thetexan.news? That's our news site. Take a look at what we've got there. We're doing fantastic work, reporting straight, unbiased news to Texans about the political landscape here in Texas. And if you like what we're doing, we hope you subscribe to The Texan, because we're tired of fake news. We think you're tired of fake news, and we're the alternative. So please go to thetexan.news and subscribe. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Hi, everyone. Today we have on Cliff Maloney, who is the national president of Young Americans for Liberty, a freedom advocacy organization with over 900 chapters on college campuses. Their mission is to identify, educate, train, and mobilize youth activists committed to winning on principle. Under his leadership, YAL launched Operation Win at the Door in 2018, a nationwide program designed to deploy students into state legislative districts across the country and elect 250 libertarian-leaning legislators by the end of the 2022 cycle. Cliff enjoys empowering freedom activists to find the most productive ways to advance the principles of liberty. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Texan, Cliff.
Happy to be here, Connie. Thanks
Awesome.
for having me.
You bet. So before you get into a little bit about, giving our listeners and our viewers more information about YAL, what really prompted me to reach out to you, in addition to knowing you via social media, is I saw that your organization was moving from Washington, D.C., correct?
The swamp, yep.
Yes, to Austin, Texas. And we had just opened our offices here in Austin, the Texan had. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So kind of talk to me a little bit about why y'all did that. And, do you like it? How's it been? That kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. We made a decision. The organization's been around since 2008.
I didn't realize it was only since 2008.
Yeah, 2008 we were founded. It was a continuation of Students for Ron Paul. So there's some Texas roots.
Got it.
And so our founder was actually from Katy, Texas, a gentleman named Jeff Frazee. And so when we started the organization, everything was in D.C., Northern Virginia, right in the D.C. metro area. And for 10 years, we've grown. We've seen the organization, really hit a stride when it comes to recruiting young people on campus. And for the past 2 years, I took over in really 2017 was my first full budget year. The number one request that I get from staff is, on how to improve YAL is to get us out of DC. And the reason for that, I'll share a few things. One, it's the second most expensive zip code in the nation. There's no industry there except your taxpayer dollars being, shipped there and used. I mean, there's nothing being created there.
Right.
But the ability for a nonprofit staffer, we're trying to compete. And our people, we're a grassroots organization. Our people are not making the buku bucks to compete with the government bureaucrats and the $1 million 2-bedroom, houses on every corner. And we don't need to be there. We're a college-based organization, and we do state legislative races. So a lot of these groups that are in D.C., they want to be close to the action, but they're doing federal lobbying. They're on the Hill talking to individuals. We have some good relationships, but I might go over to the Hill to talk to Rand Paul or Thomas Massey and thank them for following the Constitution. I don't offer anything. I mean, we're trying to get folks to understand citizen legislators and the proper role of government. So all of these things came together, and so we had to make a decision of, all right, we're going to get out of D.C. Where do we want to go? And I'll be very blunt with you, and I'll be blunt with the listeners. We looked everywhere. I looked Florida, Texas, Tennessee, New Hampshire. We looked at a lot of the states with zero state income tax and kind of cost of living, and we were able to land on our office here in Austin because we walked in. It's out towards Westlake, so it's away from the downtown. No offense, but we're in the belly of the beast. We're in Austin, but we're not downtown where it's it's a pricey area.
Absolutely.
But we were able to find the perfect office place. We're going from 4,700 square feet to 6,100 square feet. We've got around 25 employees at our organization, so we're growing like crazy.
Wow.
But we are thrilled to be in Texas. People said, it's a big leap moving. We've kept over 95% of our staff moving down here. So I'm excited. I think it's a new beginning for the organization, but we also think Texas is ground zero. I hate to say this, but Texas, I think has seen whether it's Beto-mania or whatever you want to call it. I like to call it Robert mania, but that's for another day. The reality is we want to show that we're doubling down to make sure that Texas keeps those constitutional values. And so being here and making it kind of the center of our hub as a national organization with a presence on these college campuses nationally, I hope is a signal to the citizens of Texas of just how serious we take being here and making sure our values are heard here in Texas.
That's awesome. I will tell you, first off, kudos to those college-age kids who already realized what a swamp D.C. was and said, "Why are we here?" That's wonderful. Sure. And Constitution-loving people all over Texas, I'm sure, are right now praising you for coming to Texas. It's always interesting. I've always said the fact that Texas does not have an income tax, that alone, even though tried to add too much to reasons to come to Texas, to have people or companies come to Texas, that alone is the number one driver. And I always try to remind people of that. The fact that we do not have a state income tax is why people come here. And there's really not much more that you need to add than that, because that is a huge driver for people. So I'm glad that y'all realize that as well, because it is a wonderful thing that Texas offers. All right. So, you described it some, but go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit more about YAL. Is there some more specifics you can give them?
So Young Americans for Liberty, the idea is right now, college students, the experience they have on campus, I don't think I have to tell you twice, they're typically not getting a message of limited government, lower taxes, cutting spending, cutting regulation, let's say constitutional values. They're typically getting a message that any problem we have in society has to be fixed through government. Government is kind of the almighty, it's the answer to every problem. And so our objective at Young Americans for Liberty is to go out and not only present a different message, but we identify students on campus that are open to these ideas. We try to educate them, give them a deeper belief, a deeper understanding, and we do those two things, identifying and educating students, through our recruitment events. And we call them campus activism. So think street theater, okay? So for the people watching or listening, we will set up events, and the idea of the events is to really engage people, not with visuals, but with something that is, more than just throwing a book at them. Yeah. Right. And I don't mean that The Road to Serfdom is not something we want everybody to read. But what I'm saying is most people are busy.
That's right.
They want to get their college degree. They want to have a drink at night. They want to find a wife or a husband. And they, and that's nothing wrong with that. People are busy. So we try to penetrate on campus by doing fun events, whether it's giant free speech balls to advocate for free speech. We do these huge beach balls that we blow up. We do another one called Your Life. Wait,
don't move on. Don't move on. You got to tell me more about the beach ball, the Freedom Beach Ball.
So we used to do an event called a free speech wall. So we don't have to get into the whole build the wall thing, but we used to build walls on campus that were free speech walls. And we'd have students exercise the right to free speech. And these bureaucrats, look, we all know certain folks, and I'm sure they're good people, but a lot of these campuses have bureaucrats that they're just not open to hearing and letting us speak on campus. Right. So we used to do these free speech walls, and then they would say, oh, well, that's a fire hazard. So we got creative, and we realized, well, what if we have this huge free speech beach ball? And I'm talking like 10 feet tall, right? And you can roll around, because then they can't say, and you're in the quad.
Oh, I
But the point is to have students come up, exercise the right to free speech. We'll give them a constitution, but try to get them involved in the chapter. Maybe we have a speaker that night that they can come here and dive a little deeper. But I will tell you, one of the programs that we launched is something called the National Fight for Free Speech campaign, because we started finding this trend where universities would either shut down our speakers, shut down our recruitment events, or pretty much just say, listen, you can't do this until you get permission. And the problem with that is on a public, taxpayer-funded university campus, the First Amendment is supposed to reign true. They're supposed to be respecting the Constitution. So the one number I'm happy to report to you is we have kind of went out and tried to change these codes to fight back, because a lot of conservatives, liberty-minded folks, they have complained that campus is biased, but they're not going after the root source. The universities hide behind their codes of conduct because they say we're defending the student, because they do care about the student. That's their technical customer, right? If their enrollment's down, you know, that's their way of getting the money.
Right.
So we've gone after these policies, and on 55 different campuses in the U.S., we've got victories. Now, we have about 32 right now where we've had incidents, and they're either in litigation or they're in the process. But those 55 wins have affected nearly 1.2 million students, and we do it through threat of lawsuit by sending nasty letters. We've gone to court plenty of times. I've had my name versus, you know, Janet Napolitano at the University of California more times than I'd like. But it's the only way that they will respect the idea that, look, you can't decide what ideas are heard on campus. And our objective is this. I don't want an advantage for people that believe in limited government. I just want a level playing field.
Exactly.
And when we have that, students are coming to our message in droves.
That's awesome. I mean, how can anybody on either side of the aisle object to freedom of speech? Unfortunately, we've gotten to a strange place in politics.
Let me share one story that I think is one of the most ironic. It's a horrific story for the student, but she likes for me to share it, and she's, you know, she's been through the experience now, so we can laugh about it. We had a student in Michigan handing out pocket constitutions, which the irony here is she's literally handing out the document that gives her the ability to speak freely, right? I mean, it's right there in the First Amendment. And she had an administrator approach her, some bureaucrat, demand that she stop doing what she's doing unless she goes into what they call their free speech zone.
Oh my gosh.
And says, you know, no, you have to go over here. This is where we regulate our speech to, which is irony in itself.
Exactly.
So she stood firm. It was her and two other chapter members. She stood firm. She said, you know, with all due respect and very respectfully, and by the way, she's like 5 feet tall. I love her to death. Her name's Shelley. But the point being that there was no reason to say, oh, well, she's intimidating. You know what I mean?
Yes.
She respectfully said to the officer or this bureaucrat, listen, I have every right to be here. I'm just talking to people about the Constitution, and this is a public campus.
Right.
And so they called the police.
Oh, my.
They booked all three of them in jail. They arrested them. They spent the night in jail. Now,
what college campus was this?
This was at a college campus in Michigan.
In Michigan.
Yes, and it was one of the most interesting. Battle Creek, Michigan, is a community college, which
That's
to
amazing.
me is like even more so. You find these authoritative bureaucrats who they are not used to people wanting to spread ideas.
Right.
But we've sued them. We immediately got the codes changed, which is our first objective. And then we even went after damages for the students. You're not going to put 3 people in jail overnight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sadly, that is the only thing that these bureaucrats respond to because it gives them negative press. I mean, we got tons of media hits out of it.
Sure.
But the irony, the student was handing out the document that gives them the right to be there, and then you put them in jail because they're not following your orders to go into some free speech zone.
That's amazing. What was the charge to be able to put them in jail?
They just said that they were trespassing.
Yeah.
Because they weren't following the...
Maybe disruption or...
I mean, they can come up with everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's all sorts of charges I suppose they can come up with.
But this is sadly what we're seeing across the country. And I wish I could say that it was an exception, but it's just not. I mean, it's this idea that bureaucrats have that, and they're typically liberal. I mean, but it's almost an authoritative thing where it's like, Well, we're used to hearing one message. And here's what I tell people. There's an in the classroom experience, and then there's an on-campus experience. The classroom, we're going to need systemic changes to get away from it being just the liberal, left biased kind of one size fits all. Government's the answer.
Right.
But the on-campus experience, that's where YAL comes in because you can impact that. You can go out and have conversation. And luckily for us, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, the left is phoning it in. Because they can, because the classroom experience is drowning people in the message. So why do you have to do the hard work to recruit people?
Right.
So we see the protesters. Don't get me wrong; there are agitators out there. Anytime we speak, I mean, you've got. I'm in Antifa's handbook. You can look it up, page 163. But what happens is it's an opportunity on campus, and this is where conservatives, libertarians, we have got to focus and spend time engaging people, because the classroom, people that are trying to work to change the system, I love them, I respect them, but you've got to be able to go up and talk to people, have those conversations. That's what YL is trying to do to build the youth army. And that's amazing. That's the first step of what we do is let's put together a youth army of individuals who care about these ideas. They're getting excited about them. They have a deep understanding of the proper role of government, and they understand that free markets and capitalism are a much better alternative to this kind of new wave of socialism. So let's say step one is defeat socialism and have young people excited about free markets and less government. But then step two, and this is something that I think differentiates YAL from pretty much any other youth organization. And we have plenty of partners, by the way, in the center-right coalition.
Sure.
And they're doing great work, and we need them out there. The left's got like 42 groups. So if I got 4 or 5 on my side, that's fine. Exactly. And we should talk about UC Berkeley at some point because we had a lawsuit on that. So the second step is then to deploy the youth army. And so YAL, we operate as a 501c4. And that gives us the ability to do political races. And so what we've decided is we have this youth army of people. And if you have people, and if you're grassroots, this is my advice to every grassroots organization, you're never going to match the establishment when it comes to money, which means things that just cost money, we're never going to be able to outdo them on. Now, we should keep up. But what I'm saying is TV, radio, mail, digital, we need to be doing those things. But if you think you're going to beat the establishment at things that just cost dollars and cents, there's no hope. Our advantage is we have people. They're young, they're energetic, and they want to make a difference. And they believe. Why are they energetic? Because they believe in the ideas and the principles. So I decided, what can we do with them that the establishment can't do? And that is door knocking.
Yeah. Boots on the ground.
So we decided that we would set up door knocking deployments to kind of set our students out. And we had to make a decision. Do we do federal races? Do we do statewide governor, AG, LG races? Do we do state legislative? Heck, do we do, dog catcher or city council, the real local yokel races?
Right. And
we looked at the math and we realized that state legislative races, if you were to put a group of, let's say, 10 students on the ground for 30 days, you could knock full-time, you could knock roughly 30,000 doors. And we have decided that is going to be our focus, is trying to focus, like you said in the intro, I want to elect 250 people at the state level who have a fundamental different perspective of what the role of government is, meaning much smaller, much shrinked, just getting to a point where people get back to the roots of the fundamentals of citizen legislators and people governing, not these special interests, lobbyists, and kind of the big government, everybody gets in line for what they're dishing out.
Right.
So that's the second step. I'm happy to say we did 76 races in 2018 as like a pilot year. Every single race.
Across the country. Okay.
Every single race we got involved in, we were down between 20 points to a point in pre-polling.
Wow.
So we looked at, we wanted to see how much can we move the needle. And we knocked, like I said, over 1 million doors. That was in 18. We've done, there are some off-year elections in 2019 we've done. But we've got 38 victories to show for us. So we're batting about 500. And so now our objective is to scale that. We're going to have to do about 150 races in 2020, hoping to win at least 100 of those to get on that pace to get to 250 wins. If we have 250 state legislative leaders around the country, that's roughly 5% of the state houses. That to me is where you start to see a tipping point. You start to see a real movement. And within the Republican Party, even so, I want strong cut government types, but the first step is to recruit students. The second step is to deploy them. And my objective is to produce effective outcomes that actually showcase, hey, we don't just recruit students, but we're making effective change. We're producing real results.
Right. So obviously, what's the vetting process that you have for these? You know, I'm sure, as we all know, on either side of the aisle, you know, people proclaim something, say that they're going to do this. Obviously, from my perspective and yours too, we've heard it a million times. We're, you know, limited government, free market people, and then they get into office and they do the opposite of what they say. So first off, what's your vetting process? And then second, what if you helped elect somebody and they've turned out to be a complete failure from your perspective, right? What do you do then?
Interesting. So I think this sets us apart from most. I have no interest in getting people elected that are squishes. And I have no interest in getting people elected that say they're not going to be. And then if they are, I don't have a problem with cutting them out. We've done that. We've done that with one of our individuals. So let me talk about the vetting process, and then I'll talk to you about how they've done.
Sure.
So the vetting process is pretty extensive. We want to get people that we know have a legitimate understanding of the philosophy. And like I said, people that fundamentally, the one question I ask people on their final interview before we decide on the endorsement, I said, are you ready for an awkward encounter? And that's what I say to them. Because most people don't realize, if you walk into a room, let's not say it's politics, there's 100 or 150 people in the room, and you're the only one who has a disagreement. That's not fun. That's an awkward situation, right? And from your experience, walking in,
absolutely,
maybe you have a few friendlies that are going to stand with you on some of the issues, but the vast majority of these things, I don't want to say you're going to stand alone, but it's going to be a large majority versus you and a couple friends. That's difficult. Right. And so I'm looking for people that are not only prepared, but are almost excited about that and understand that you're going to even disagree with a lot of Republicans on a lot of these issues because you have conservative or liberty-minded values. And so we ask 30 questions on our survey. People make fun of our survey because they say, most of these groups have like 4 key issue areas. I want a deeper understanding of the people we're going to endorse. In 2018, we had over 500 people apply for endorsement. And this was our pilot year. We weren't really even soliciting, let's say, but once the word got out, and that's the cool thing about our activists and our students is, they're reaching out to their local reps. And here's a secret weapon. We now have 500 people on the record. So even if we didn't endorse them, we've now got them on the record.
That's right.
So give me a couple, cycles and you'll see what we're doing with that. But,
this is what they claimed on their endorsement.
Right.
And this is how they voted if they went on to win, even if y'all didn't help them. Right.
So that's going to be an exciting thing. But they fill out the survey. They do, if they pass the test. So the 30 questions, some of them have like 4 or 5 different answers. 4 out of the 5 will pass our test to move on. Like 4 out of the 5 answers. Got it. But some of them, if it's like, would you vote to raise taxes? Like an easy one. If they said, well, yes, or maybe. Yeah. It's not even worth our time. Because it's just such a low bar.
Right.
So we have different responses that are okay for each of them. And then the idea is if they get past that, the staff will do a basic analysis of the district to see if it's winnable based on the party they're running under.
Right.
And here's my rule. I don't care about party. Now, I will tell you we've elected 38 Republicans, but I will say this like publicly, I don't care about party. If you find a Democrat who is running, who's going to cut taxes, cut regulation, and they're actually going to, protect the Constitution and civil liberties, then we'll back them if it's a Democrat district. And honestly, if it's like San Francisco, I would probably recommend to our activists, if you have to run in that district, run in the Democrat primary and win the primary.
Right.
Because the math, the math just doesn't add up. That
happens a lot in Texas, by the way.
Well, the opposite way.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, the opposite.
No offense to Texas, but you guys have quite an epidemic, I would say here, of Democrats that run as Republicans. Right. But that's for another day. So the plan is to vet candidates based on that. Once they get past the questionnaire, they go to a staff analysis. The staff does a full analysis, and at that point, if they think that the district's viable, it goes to the Endorsement Committee. We have 2 thresholds we care about to endorse. They're viable and principled. Tons of viable candidates, not a lick of principle. Tons of people who are principled don't have a shot at winning.
Right.
So finding that mix, and we want them to be, like I said, down no more than 20 points down. Okay. And this is state house typically. So when I say 20 points, I mean, usually that means somebody doesn't have name ID, they're a new candidate. So there is some room to move.
Right.
But we try to find them that they're in a match where if we get involved in the race, we can bring them over the finish line. But those are the thresholds, principled and viable, and we really try to stick to that as much as we can. Now, holding them accountable. So we have something called the Haslett Coalition, which is in reference to Henry Hazlitt. You wrote Economics in One Lesson.
Yes.
I think it's one of the simplest, easiest free market, let's say, non-controversial, just free market books out there. Everyone should read it. And so we've started something called the Haslett Coalition, which is for state legislators, both state house and state senate across the country. So our people get into it, and we have some other folks that have joined. And the idea is to be part of the Haslett Coalition, we ask people, it's a project of YAL, we ask them to, maintain the principles in our survey. And really just, we have a list of kind of issue areas. If someone goes and votes for something, we have a staff member who works directly with the legislators to track votes, but also to get intentional about getting ahead on things and giving them talking points.
Right.
We had an individual in Vermont who we endorsed. It was a young man who voted for a plastic bag ban, which came attached to a couple $1 million in new taxes. And to be honest with you, it was one of the best things that's happened because it happened early and we were acting quickly. We sent an email to all the legislators, including this individual, and said, hey, this is not acceptable. This is not conservative fiscally like you promised us.
Right.
You said you would not vote for new taxes. You clearly did. You're no longer part of our coalition. And you know what happened? I did not expect. You figure there's about 38 of our people that we've got elected that are in the coalition. There's an additional 30 who we found around the country that are hardcore free market type legislators that are in. So let's say there's about 70 people we have in this coalition. About 50 of them replied to me directly and said, thank you.
Really?
And I was amazed by this because they said they're part of other groups. And, we've talked about some other groups that might do good work.
Sure.
But they said this is the first time that we've seen where somebody said enough's enough. You acted swiftly, you did it, you were very clear, and you were like, this is a line in the sand. And they said that gives us cover because that means that what we do actually matters and that there's value to that. And so we are not afraid as a coalition to stand up and say to our legislators, look, we have a brand here. We have an expectation. We have a philosophy and a mission we're trying to accomplish. It doesn't help us to get these people elected if they're going to then get squishy. Now, if somebody takes a vote and we go to them and we have a conversation, they're like, oh my gosh, like I just didn't understand it.
Right.
We're happy to kind of say, okay, don't do it again. In this case, that was not the case.
Right.
It was leadership said that that's it, right? The second you hear leadership said, that's typically all right, have a good day.
Yeah.
We no longer want to be affiliated with you. But I am not afraid to hold these people accountable because I think that your resume now for Young Americans for Liberty and all of our students get excited. They're the reason. I mean, imagine you're one of these students. There's you and 9 other people on the ground. You get somebody elected and the empowerment you feel because, we had a woman in Kentucky, Savannah Maddox, 31 years old. We got her elected. 10 people on the ground, knocked about 30,000 doors. She just passed constitutional carry in Kentucky. She did. She is the primary sponsor that we got elected. So imagine you're one of those 10 students.
Absolutely.
You feel empowered.
Directly impacted this.
So I have to make sure that the people that they work to get elected are staying principled. And so we're going to praise our champions. We're going to give them that extra oomph of confidence and support that they're going to need. And I'm also not afraid to say to people, hey, you screwed up, you're gone. Because we're trying to save the republic and you need to be firm in order to do that.
Absolutely. I'm kind of interested to get back to the college campus arena. When you were talking, I was reminded about a friend of mine saying not too long ago, once upon a time, college campuses were, where the kids were wanting freedom, let's stick it to the man. That was kind of the mentality then. And now it's like totally flipped. It just what you said, it's more of they want to depend on the man now, right? Instead of stick it to the man, which of the man is government, somebody telling us what to do. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think a great example of that is UC Berkeley. So literally the birthplace of free speech and this idea that, let us speak, don't shut us down, Vietnam War, all of these things. UC Berkeley I'll give you the example of what they did to us and then talk about kind of the greater picture here. So UC Berkeley for a year and a half denied YAL's ability to be recognized as a student organization. But here's where these bureaucrats are tricky. Here's where the bureaucrats, and they're smart. They're almost like maniacal geniuses. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I sometimes I don't give them enough credit. They would not put it in writing. They would not document it anywhere that they were not registering the group. They just would delay the process. Oh, you need this, but they'd say it all in verbally. Finally, one of the idiots at the student affairs office put in writing and said, hey, we're not going to be recognizing. Listen, to get recognized matters. You can apply for all the funding you pay for with the student activity fee. You can get a room for a meeting, a room for a speaker, a table on campus. So you have to be recognized to do these things.
Yeah.
So they said in writing that YAL was too similar, quote, too similar. This was part of the lawsuit, which those words were too similar to other organizations. Now they were referring to a defunct group of like free market, like book club from 10 years ago. But if you did just the math on groups that you call right of center, free market versus leftist, progressive, socialist type groups, I mean, it's like not even close. There's like over 40 organizations on campus. Students for Bernie, Students for Hillary, the Progressive Student Association, the Socialist Students of America, the, Democrat clubs. There's all these groups, and then there's like 4 or 5 that you would call free market groups. And so we went after them and we sued the entire UC system. And the beautiful thing about this is we won. And they said, you no longer can justify that a staffer or a bureaucrat gets to decide what is a student group. It's arbitrary, meaning you need 10 students. And if 10 students say they want to do it, they can be recognized and they can apply and they can have, all the same rights everybody else could.
Right.
But you look at campuses and your original question about, how did this come to be such a flipped script?
Yeah.
And I think what's happened is, you have individuals who they think they know better than others. And this is the mindset of liberals right now, where it's like this cradling of the mind, the coddling of the mind,
Right.
as Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff talk about in the coddling of the American college student's mind. That's what they write about. It's become this idea that you need to be sheltered. They've lost the sense that actually you want to hear all ideas. Right. And I'll give you an example. They refer to so many of these things as hate speech. And that's how they shut a lot of people down, is they say, oh, well, that's hate speech.
Or your hate group.
Right,
then, right.
And so I've had this before where they've called me, they've said, oh, and it was funny. There was a reporter, I did a talk at American University about why DC is more focused on power than on policy. And there was a protester from Antifa there, and the reporter asked him, well, why are you protesting Cliff Maloney and Young Americans for Liberty? He said, well, they support the Constitution, and that's hate speech. Right now. And here's the thing, we can all laugh about it, but this is the mentality.
I haven't gotten to the laughing part yet.
This is the mentality where they deem anything they disagree with as hate speech to shut it down. But here's my warning. Let me be friendly to my friends on the left. The problem with trying to say we should shut down, let's say it is hateful speech. Let's say it's something that is, Nazis, or something that is, and I don't even like labels. Let's just say that somebody thinks that somebody should get more rights than others based on the color of their skin, which we can all disagree with.
Right.
Who gets to decide what is hate speech? That's the slippery slope. Where is it? And who? Because if you think that the government should decide that, let's pick a politician that leftists are going to disagree with. Rick Santorum. Most of my liberal friends would say, I can't stand that guy.
Right.
Diehard social conservative. Okay.
Right.
Well, you're saying the government should be able to decide what is hate speech. So when Rick Santorum gets elected and his people are deciding what hate speech is, they're not going to agree with you.
That's right.
So our argument is, stop trying to hide behind these words of shutting down speech. Stop trying to hide behind this idea of we know better than you. We just want to own government. Because under Obama, that was the case. They said, well, our guy's elected,
You're right.
so we trust government. And now it's like, well, Trump's elected, so we don't trust government. And it's like, just stop trusting government.
Right.
Let people talk. But my other argument about this whole hate speech thing is let all these ideas be heard. Let's hear who the crazies in the room are. Let's hear some of the ideas so we can know who they are. We can combat them intellectually, not physically. But we can challenge these people, and then we can know, most importantly, don't associate with these crazies. Don't associate with people that have beliefs that you completely disavow. But when you shut down these people, you kind of give them cover.
Exactly.
And the left has lost that sense. They want to hide behind hate speech to shut everybody down.
And, you brought up a great point. That's what I always actually said when I was in office, when people would disagree with me. I would say, well, then why are you wanting to give more power to government when I'm the government right now and you disagree with me? And it would always kind of make their head spin off a little bit, right? It's like, oh, that made too much sense, right? It's the same thing what you mentioned about now Trump is in power. Well, then shouldn't we want less power to government regardless of who is in there, whether they're on your side or not? To me, that seems like the logical way to approach it, so that when your particular party or person isn't in power, then you have an empowered government, to do things for you, right? Because you're not liking the one that's in power. That was a little confusing, but you know what I meant by that.
Well, and I agree wholeheartedly, and this is, I think, the problem that the AOCs, the Elizabeth Warrens, and the Bernie Sanders wing, the open Democrat socialists, this is the problem they have, which is, especially those running for president, it's like, how do you run for president against Trump, claiming, everything he stands for is so bad, but then your solution is more government.
Right.
Your solution is to centralize more of the power. And I have to laugh at my friends that are arguing for this, because it is such a fallacy to think, once again, they just want their people in power.
Right.
And this is where I've kind of come to the terms that the left doesn't even care about policy anymore. It's so about rhetoric, because I'll even show them, hey, listen, like the recent spending bill. I am completely against it. Republicans support it. I mean, Trump, is even supporting it, but it's going to be the largest deficit in American history.
Yep.
And what I've said to people is, if you look at this, like, why do you disagree with Trump doing this but not Obama? It's like, well, his rhetoric, his diplomacy. And that's where I laugh, because even if the policy is identical, they just want their guy to be the one giving the speech.
Right. That's exactly it.
And you cannot trust government. It makes me laugh. And by the way, one note about AOC. As I work with college students. So AOC is a hot topic. People want to talk about, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez all the time. Any TV hit, anything. Let's talk AOC, because she has an audience. We should not underrepresent or undervalue that. She is being heard by millions of people daily. The one benefit, I think AOC is a gift to actual free market, conservative, fiscally conservative individuals, because finally somebody is owning the mantle of socialism. And I mean this. I mean, Bernie's, kind of said it. Elizabeth Warren's kind of said it. She is owning it, and it's an opportunity. The Democrats can no longer hide behind the working class, moderate Democrat message. She is pushing the party so far left that it gives Republicans an opportunity. Now, I'm not saying they're going to capture it, but I think people like us who actually believe in limiting government, it's an opportunity to step up and present an alternative to the socialism that shows you why free markets have created the most prosperous country in the history of the world. And so I look at it, and I say this because people ask about AOC all the time. It is an opportunity for us to stand tall, stand firm, and give a message of clarity about why free markets are the way forward. She's creating that discussion that for a lot of years it kind of went by as the Democrats could get a pass on that. But I don't think they can anymore.
But don't you? I find that still frustrating, because what I seem to see is people, I don't know if they haven't been educated. Is it our education that has gone awry? Because even though, yes, I think it's good to have that discussion, so many people out there don't see socialism as being a bad thing. Right. So what do they not see what has happened in other countries? And of course, I always think that the media gives them cover too, right? And shows, but what did they say for a while there? Cuba has free health care. Right. Therefore, I'm like, oh my gosh. So, this is what's so frustrating to me. How do you deal with that as an organization and kids who are in college and haven't learned that socialism is bad?
So obviously. You get it. Other people don't. They have not, I'm 28. The college students now, the 18 to 22-year-olds, they have not heard or seen, or they don't understand that that there are repercussions. They haven't, been through some of these other failed communist or socialist states. They haven't seen them.
And are they being taught that? I don't know.
No, they're definitely not being taught that.
They must not be.
We're definitely seeing that. The idea of trusting government and the almighty authority being left to, dictators or politicians, they're not making the connection. But here's where I don't lose hope. The word socialism, not necessarily the ideas behind it, but the word socialism is polling very well amongst young people.
Is that right?
Oh, no.
Wait a minute. What do you mean
polling
very well?
The word socialism is not looked at as negatively with young people as older folks. That makes me lose hope. Yeah. But what gives me hope is that when you poll them on the individual issues, should average Americans give 25 cents of every dollar they make to the government, people say no. And 25 cents, that's if you got a good accountant.
Right.
But here's the thing. I mean, if you're making, minimum wage in college,
that's right.
Should a quarter of every dollar? No, people it's stupid. That gives me hope right there. Now, whether they care about raising tax on the rich or not, that's a deeper discussion. But the instinct for average Americans is that they should not be giving a quarter of every dollar to the government. That's the first. Privacy and civil liberties. Young people don't think the government should be reading their emails. They don't think the government should be seeing their text messages without a warrant. The Fourth Amendment, they're backing things like that. When it comes to war, most young people are standing behind the fact that, look, we've been at war in the Middle East almost 20 years now. Maybe we should scale back. Maybe we should. They're agreeing with Trump's America First foreign policy of non-intervention.
Interesting.
And I mean like 70 to 80% of young people are back. Now, they might not be making the connection to Trump's foreign policy and kind of non-intervention.
Sure.
But that's where their instinct is. And when it comes to kind of all of these things lined up that we would say is a free market approach, they're with us. But what they're not doing is connecting that to the word, let's say, free market capitalism, right? There's a disconnect.
Right.
So there's work to be done.
That makes total sense.
There's work to be done on the messaging, but I haven't lost hope because when you break it down issue by issue, and especially, gosh, if you give them a factoid or if you give them some education on the issue, it's like not even close. They're tired of government. They've been promised things from government their whole life, and they're kind of like, listen, let me go out and create. There's so much innovation in tech, and we have so many things for young people these days. They're tired of kind of the brick and mortar education system of public school and kind of this cramped up lifestyle. That's what all the polling is showing. But I'm not going to act like we can phone it in because the socialism word is still sexy to young people.
Right.
So that's the work that we have to do.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Well, we have about 5 minutes left here. I could go on and on because this is very fascinating to me. But tell me a little bit about, well, first off, tell everybody where they need to go to find out more about your organization, to college kids that are listening right now, how they get in touch with y'all, how they can participate, what's all the stuff that you do.
Right, absolutely. So there are 3 major things that we're always looking for. If you go to yaliberty.org, more specifically, yaliberty.org/door for Operation Win at the Door, which is our fledgling program, there are 3 things that we need. The first is any student that wants to get involved can sign up. And that means joining a chapter, becoming a member. If they want a door knock as part of our door knocking deployment, they can sign up there. The second thing we need are candidates. So there are 2 things. One, if you're a candidate out there who's watching and you want to get involved, or more importantly, if you want to recommend a candidate, doesn't mean you're giving the endorsement, but if you're saying, hey, this is my state rep and we want them to fill out the survey, you can recommend.
Even if they're already elected.
Right. You can recommend a candidate.
Awesome.
Newly elected, if they're current incumbent or a new candidate, you can recommend that we look into them. And if we're asking you to do some of the legwork, what's their email, what's their phone, it'll help us to get a hold of them. But you can recommend a candidate, or if you're a candidate, you can find our survey at that website. So those are the first 2 things, students or candidates. And the third thing is resources. We operate, when you combine our C3 and C4, nearly a $6 million budget. So it means a lot of legwork on my end and our team to raise the funds. But when people donate, it goes directly towards, the literature for the students, the snacks, the gas money, the housing that we put them in. There's a lot of impact you can have by giving. But yaliberty.org/door, students, candidates, or people that want to help us to invest and give us funds. Those are the 3 major ways people can get involved. And if we want to elect 250 Liberty legislators by 2022, those are the 3 funnels we need to fill and try to scale as quickly as possible.
Perfect. And for any college kids, I always know, because I've certainly run organizations and been involved in different organizations, it takes a little bit of kind of dipping your toe in the water first, right? You know, some people want to just dive right in and want to do everything all at once. But certainly for college students out there, they can just see if they can actually see if there's an organization already on their campus, maybe come to their meetings. I guess they have do all of them have a monthly meeting?
So all of our chapters meet weekly.
Oh, weekly.
We have 18 chapters right here in Texas.
Awesome.
So 18 schools in Texas that are meeting weekly. We try to do a big recruitment event once a month on campus. So those are more out. But if somebody, it's a good way to put it. If you want to dip your toe in the water, right?
A lot of people want to, right? Because they don't know.
Check it out.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you, come out to our meetings. Get involved. You can go to the website and see if there's a chapter, but we'll connect you with the chapter leader. You're not signing up and immediately, you're going to be deployed to do a race.
That's what because I think people get worried. Well, I don't know if I have enough time. Well, just come
to the meetings. We have speakers. We will show videos and have talkbacks, but it's a community. We're typically going to go out and have some beers afterwards because we want people to really have conversations. We want to do it at your speed. But that's the cool thing. People get involved. They might come out and, just be interested. Hey, I'm tax policy, or I'm trying to figure out, somebody said that we've cut regulations. Now there's all these jobs. Well, I'm not learning that in the classroom. So tell me about this.
Right.
And then we watch a video, we dive in, and then all of a sudden, they're getting a much deeper understanding. So that's kind of our process.
Terrific. And as you mentioned, you've got an office here in Austin. I don't know if people can actually drop by there, but
come out to headquarters.
I think that's always fun to actually see the office. So I think as I recall, you're fairly newly married, aren't you?
Just got married in November. My wife's Air Force. She's an officer, so she's much smarter than I am.
Oh, I didn't know.
So
that.
I split my time between Florida and here.
Oh,
because our headquarters are obviously here. It's much better than splitting your time between Florida and D.C. No offense to my D.C. friends, but Texas is a much better place to be.
Awesome.
Now, we were in San Angelo for a year.
Oh,
so she
I
was
didn't
stationed.
know that.
So last year I was splitting my time between a lot of San Angelo and D.C.
Wow, what a difference that.
There are only 3 flights a day out of San Angelo, and that's on a good day.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So I've got some Texas roots now. Oh. That was my test for a year, and then I said, okay, let's move the organization here.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what kind of things do you do for fun other than this, or is this it? Is this your whole life?
This is it. My objective is to build this youth army, so I'm focused on this. The wife and I, we will do the basics of enjoying local family, friends. I do theater.
I saw that recently. I thought that was interesting.
I played a cop in a local community theater show that
here in Austin, or was that somewhere else?
This is in Florida. So this was we're in Destin at Eglin Air Force Base.
Oh yes. Oh, I love Destin.
So on the weekends, the AL staff they laughed at me when I said, oh, I'm going to do a show. They said, where are you going to fit that in your schedule? So the community theater was great. They worked with my schedule, and
that's something you've had a passion for?
Yes. So I've been it's been 5 years. I've kind of been focused on YAL and just trying to take it to new heights, but was able to find this show and trying to. My wife loved it because it gave me a reason to make sure I was home on weekends.
Yeah, exactly.
The team couldn't say, hey, we've got this speaking event in California. We need you to be out next week.
To pull you away.
But it was great. A show called Rumors by Neil Simon. It was a comedy, a farce. And I probably, the team after the show just wrapped on Sunday, the team said, hey, we're not going to be able to do that for a while. So I've probably got another year before I can do something. But a fun time in Florida, get to know the community.
Yeah.
And it's neat in the theater community because you think, you're not going to find a lot of folks.
Right.
One of my coworkers or one of my co-cast members is involved with the campus ministry on base.
Oh, really?
2 or 3 others commented. They saw my videos. They're like, I was really intrigued by you talking about we did a video in response to these mass shootings and just talking about how laws can't fix insanity. So it's always neat to kind of build those bridges wherever you can.
It really is. That's awesome. Well, great. Well, that's terrific. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for coming and spending your time with us this morning. The Texan is, what we work on is to educate people, all the different organizations, laws, everything, try to educate them, be a real source for people here in Texas. And so it was important that we have you here as well. And I thank you so much. I think y'all are doing great work, and I appreciate you very much. So.
Well, Connie, I want to thank the Texan. I mean, I think what you guys are doing is getting the word out there to so many folks, and the work that you're doing. We need a real source, let's say, in the state that's going to give you the facts and the brutal truth, if you will.
That's right.
So we appreciate what you guys are doing here. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for watching. If you've been enjoying our podcast, it would be awesome if you would review us on iTunes. And if there's a guest you'd love to hear on our show, give us a shout out on Twitter. Tweet @TheTexanNews. We're so proud to have you standing with us as we seek to provide real journalism in an age of misinformation. We're paid for exclusively by readers like you, so it's important we all do our part to support The Texan by subscribing and telling your friends about us. God bless you, and God bless Texas.